is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback. Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for tuning into us, the Three Stooges. I'm Scott Johnston, joined by Curly and Shemp here, otherwise known as Mark Hoffman and Bill Mahoney. You guys fans of the Stooges when you were young, or now?
No question. Still am.
It is such a guy thing. My wife and daughter look at me and say, "I don't get it," and I said, "You don't," because it's a guy thing.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Come on,
It's a
man.
slapstick
Jeremy,
guy
you watch
thing.
Three Stooges?
See, I was more of a Little Rascals guy
Like them too?
than the Stooges.
I liked it as a kid. I got older. The Little Rascals just didn't seem.
Well, I don't watch either now. The only time I watched the Three Stooges really ever was when I worked at BZ. We had a sister station that we had to do a news show for as well. And on New Year's Eve, the news got preempted because they would do a Three Stooges marathon.
Can't beat
And
that.
I was like, no work, but I have to watch the Three Stooges. It's a toss-up.
I'll give you some Three Stooges trivia real quick.
Uh-oh.
Name me the original Three Stooges, and I'll give you a hint.
Wasn't Shemp in the original?
Yes, Shemp. It was Shemp, Curly, and Moe.
Yeah.
And then Shemp left.
Yeah.
And no, it was Shemp, Larry, and Moe. And then Shemp left, and they looked at Curly, and apparently Curly was called Curly because he had curly, thick hair. And he said, "Well, your hair kind of looks too much like Moe." So he went out, shaved his head, came back, and that's how. And to me,
Brilliant.
Curly is the best Three Stooges ever.
Yeah.
And then he
I think
suffered,
so.
had health problems, had a stroke, had to sort of quit. They brought him back for one episode where he played a stranger on a train when Shemp was
Wow.
part. And then Shemp died, and
Oh, my goodness,
and
you're
then they
bringing
had
me down,
yeah,
man.
and they had to
Stooges are having strokes.
I know.
Yeah.
Man, they were supposed to
had-
live forever.
And then when they did the Three Stooges movies, they had like the other ones, the Joe Bessers and the way too much knowledge on the Three Stooges.
Did you guys ever watch Benny Hill?
Yes.
I love Benny Hill.
For obvious reasons.
And the newscasts were always fun. It was just
How could you do that today?
in the
It's very-
road ahead. No, it's in the road ahead. Yes,
Right, or they're the like the ones that are like, you'd see a map and you are here.
They know where we are.
Yeah, we were really
And that
here
old guy
to talk
always
about
just get patted
the
on the head all the time.
We're really here to talk about the Sports Illustrated
Sorry.
issue with the Three Stooges and Benny Hill. I remember they were on the cover.
Anyway, this is the Past Our Prime podcast, and we are looking at the October 14th, 1974 issue of Sports Illustrated. Two former UCLA Bruin greats, two of college hoops all-time greats, Kareem and Bill, Abdul-Jabbar and Walton, on the cover, about to face off against each other in the NBA for the first time. That was back in the day, guys, when the center was truly the center of it all. I mean,
Center of attention.
Your team and its success was based on how good your big man was.
Everyone went through. All offenses. Lanier,
Well-
the Gilmores, everything went through them.
Remember Kareem's line in Airplane? You tried dragging Lanier up and
Yes,
down the court
yes.
for 48 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Kareem was MVP in 71 and 72. He would win it again in 74, as well as three more times, a record 6 MVPs, all-time great career, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I gotta admit, guys, still have kind of a hard time talking about Bill in the past tense.
Yeah.
He was so literally full of life, and these deaths, as we were talking before we started, Bill, they seem to be lining up these days. It's not fun.
Yeah, and Kareem is still alive, but he's never been someone that's out in the public eye. He
And he's
doesn't
also had
talk
health
much.
issues. He had that fall.
Yeah, but I'm saying with Bill Walton, he was always around, whether it was doing basketball games or interviews, he was always forefront. Some of the other guys, like I said, Kareem, he just doesn't put him out there enough to talk.
He was always a more private guy.
Yes, yeah.
All right, Mark, do us a favor, please, and make us some money.
That's right. Here are our ad section, and as soon as you open the magazine, there's like actually two great ads. On the left side are two guys smoking Raleigh cigarettes while panning for gold. That's really good.
That's what you
do. You can also buy on this for gold panning. You can get the 6-in-1 tool. Hatchet, hammer, saw.
Yes.
So they're getting you weapons, that you can order online.
Good. Those people still live in Idaho.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm always thinking about fishing and a hatchet.
And panning for gold, because that'll really work.
It does.
They're Niner fans,
The
obviously.
panning for gold now are just the people at the off-ramps on the highway.
Exactly. Aren't they? I used to pan for gold at Knott's Berry Farm.
And on the other side, across from the panning for gold cigarette smoking hatchet people, there's the ad for the VW. Volkswagen, had the Beetle, real popular, but they were trying to get other cars popular. The Dasher, which really doesn't look that great.
No.
But, for over $4,000, you get what you pay for. That's kind of interesting.
Dasher.
Yeah, but 25 miles to the gallon.
Isn't Dasher a...
Well, I was saying if they're going to do a Dasher,
A
reindeer?
where's Blitzen,
Yeah.
where's Blitzen and Rudolph?
That's right. How
I
can they steal that name?
I just don't know. Because I don't think, Blitzen works for a car or,
And
Dash.
what is it? With the Santa thing, with the reindeers. When Callie was young, it always ends with Blitzen and dance or whatever. I had her put in with Burrow and Mixon, so I've got her doing the reindeers with
And
Burrow
Bengals.
and Mixon because it sounded so good coming off a Bengals game. Because she does the whole reindeers and Burrow and Mixon. I kept thinking one day if I ever meet Joe Burrow, I'll go see.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
and
you
she's gonna sing that in a couple years, and everyone's gonna look at her like, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly.
When I was a kid in Chicago, they did a spoof. The other kids did a spoof on the Rudolph Red-Nosed Reindeer, where instead it was like a Western. It was like the sheriff came to town. Rudolph, with your gun so bright, won't you shoot my wife tonight?
Oh my goodness,
Hey, that's from the Hatchet guys.
that's lovely.
Yeah, isn't it?
All right, scorecard. Now that we've made all that revenue,
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Bill, you go first.
Frank Robinson, named the first black manager in baseball, way long overdue.
Yep.
He just hoped baseball people didn't say, all right, Frank Robinson is the first black manager. Now we have one. In his heart, he thinks he was hired not because he's black, but because he was hired because of his ability. Which obviously, if you saw him on the field being a Hall of Famer, that's exactly why they hired him. Frank Robinson was a good player and a good manager as well.
He did become a he was
did.
a good manager.
Yeah, he was.
He was
He
a
was.
great player.
Yes, he was.
Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, he's a good manager.
I mean, it was one of the worst trades the Cincinnati Reds ever did. They had Frank Robinson, and they traded him to the Orioles.
Yeah, and the Angel went to the Angels eventually, and they traded him out as well.
What do you
And
got?
I think the announcement was for the 75 season. So basically,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
the
That's
74
right, 'cause we're at
season
the end
had-
of the
74 season had
It's
just
over
ended.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, Mark, what do you got?
Well, I got this how soon they forget is the Moses Malone thing. So Moses Malone decided not to play college basketball and took the money and entered the training camp of the Utah Stars of the ABA. So he was supposed to go to Maryland, but on the campus in Maryland, all the Terrapin fans had a T-shirt that said, Moses who?
Yeah.
Could you imagine Moses Malone playing college ball just 1 year on that Maryland team? He might have come
Anywhere.
away as the best player in
Yeah.
Maryland history, better than Len
So-
Bias and
Oh, I guess it was because the ABA had the rule that you could come straight to the
Right.
ABA, but you couldn't in the NBA, right?
right. ABA would
Interesting.
do anything to get you.
That would be interesting because when did the ABA stop? After the 76 season?
Yeah, I think 76. I think was the 75, 76 was the last season. I
Yeah,
believe.
because Dr. J was on that 77 Sixers team.
Right.
So that would have been interesting if Moses had gone to college for 2 years and then was planning to, that probably played into it. It was like,
Right.
look, if I go to college here and the ABA folds, I'm stuck going to college.
Right.
And the money they were offering him,
yeah.
you had to take it.
Absolutely.
You know what's interesting though about that ABA, the merger? What happens if the Spurs hadn't been merged in? What team would I be a fan of today?
Oh.
I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be anything that we could think of. It'd be like the Kentucky Colonels
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
like that.
whoever's replaced them. Yeah,
Right.
I'd have to go back to the Detroit Pistons or wait till the Dallas Mavericks came into existence.
Ah.
'Cause-
Or whatever, fancy uniform you like.
Exactly, because that's how I judge everything.
This magazine has said often enough, this is written by Sports Illustrated, that politics has no place in sport. The dictum bears repeating in the wake of India's lamentable decision not to meet South Africa in the Davis Cup finals. Follow India's thinking to its logical conclusion, and there would be almost no international competition. Communists would not meet capitalists. Scottish nationalists would refuse to compete against the English, and the Asian Games would collapse under the weight of religious partisanship. So they're saying, that should never come into play. I don't necessarily agree or disagree. Actually, I do disagree. I think sometimes it has to. And the world decided not that long ago that the apartheid country of South Africa was going to be ostracized until they changed their ways. I can see where that could be
just
dangerous if you don't like if the sentiment is against a country, let's just say Israel right now, and they go up against them, but it was pretty much universally thought that what was going on in South Africa was a bad thing.
Right. And it eventually would have to change.
They said it, Bill. Who said what?
Woody Hayes. He was asked, if that's the Ohio State football coach, if you don't remember, they asked if his teams had any weaknesses. He said, sure. We've gone as long as 7 years without a fumble between the center and quarterback. We've had 2 this season. That's 14 years shot to hell.
That's all or nothing. There we go.
That's a true football coach right there.
Yeah, rather than be like, man,
that's amazing.
We went 7 years without one. That's the amazing part.
Yeah,
he obviously sees the glass
jar
half
empty. That's right, Mark. He sees it half empty.
I just want to know if Woody Hayes called the school the Ohio State, like everyone does.
Yeah, I bet you he didn't.
Now, wasn't that done because Ohio University was claiming they were the Ohio State, and so Ohio State said, no, we are the Ohio State University?
Would make sense. A patriotic shout.
Right.
The Patriots are fast out of the gate. Now this, we're coming off a time when the Patriots were the team in football history. 6 championships, 9 Super Bowl trips with Brady and Belichick. But that was not the case years and years ago. They were a bad NFL franchise until Bob Kraft bought the team. But out of the gate in 1974, Jim Plunkett, quarterback, coach Chuck Fairbanks had them 4-0. They start the season by beating the 2-time defending champion Miami Dolphins. Then they beat the Giants on the road before coming home and taking care of the Rams. Another good win.
Mm-hmm.
And then they beat the Colts 42-3. They're 4-0, about to start a 3-week stretch on the road. In the Colts game, Plunkett called 142 dig on the. I love the play call names. Who was it when J.K. McKay was telling us about the pass catch, and he goes, "Oh, it was the 165 X cross, and I was X." Or I just love that stuff. But 142 dig on the third play of the game against the Colts blitz. The former Heisman winner lofts one high and deep into the arms of another name I hadn't heard in a long time, Reggie Rucker.
Yeah,
I remember Reggie Rucker.
Great name.
Now, wasn't Reggie Rucker the one who was an analyst and said that he had lunch or dinner with one of the coaches, and then it turned out he didn't? He just made it up, and he got in trouble for that.
So the Pats were 4-0, and the Colts were winless. A week earlier, owner Robert Irsay was on the sideline, went over to his head coach, Howard Schnellenberger, and suggested putting in Burt Jones at quarterback. Schnellenberger responded by giving the owner a mouthful and a thumb, telling him to get out of here. It was Schnellenberger who went away. Irsay fired him right after the game. I guess that's not how you treat the owner when they come down on the sideline.
Man, if it's just, it's the way they made that sound. He went in like halftime and he said, yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
And then they did the general manager who had never coached and said, he's the guy.
Yeah.
But, you talk about the Patriots. They started out 6-1. They finished 7-7.
Yeah.
And then I thought, because you're right, when I was growing up, other than when they played the Bears in the 86 Super Bowl or 85, they were no good. Pats were just not a good team. From 2001 to 2021, Patriots missed the playoffs only 3 times. But from 74 to 94, they only went to the playoffs 6 times.
Yeah.
So it just shows you the totally different generations, of teams.
Yep.
And then, Scott, I want to ask, as I looked up Plunkett stuff, why is he not in the Hall of Fame?
He's one of those Hall of Very Good guys. I'll tell you this, right? They're talking about Eli Manning going in the Hall of Fame, and Only reason Eli Manning is being talked about going in the Hall of Fame is because he won 2 Super Bowls.
But how many
Well,
playoff
so
games?
did-
How many playoff games has Eli Manning won?
I would say probably 6,
8.
8.
Because he won the Super Bowl twice. He
Yes.
never won another playoff game other than the years he won the Super Bowl. He never won.
Thanks to a catch off the helmet.
Yeah, he never won another playoff game
Yeah.
other than the years that he played in the Super Bowl.
The interesting thing about Jim Plunkett,
Maybe I'll
you know,
remember.
Bay Area was his magic ticket because, you know, he played at Stanford, was a dominant quarterback at Stanford, and then he gets in the NFL with the Patriots, but everyone remembers him with the Raiders. And he also quarterbacked the Niners for a while. But his most successful years were college quarterback at Stanford and pro quarterback with the Raiders initially when they were up in Oakland.
But his first 7 years, I found he was 34-53. His last 8 years, he was 38-19 and 2 Super Bowls. That's a good career.
Yeah. Well, I think
That
I think the Hall of Fame has made a mistake in that they've put in a few guys because they had Super Bowl success. They overvalue Super Bowl success, in my opinion, because and then you start getting into that okay, well, if this guy's in, why is this guy not in? And
But isn't
that
usually
is how
2
you
Super
water
Bowls
down.
get you that?
Well, it has, yes, it has.
Like, he's the only one, isn't it?
He is the only quarterback to win
Yeah.
2 Super Bowls and he was Super Bowl MVP of
Yeah.
19
That's right.
the first one.
That's right.
But what's
And
interesting,
they were also underdogs in both of those
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
Bowls against the Eagles and the Redskins.
That was Marcus Allen's the second one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That cutback, run 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
by the way, the Reggie Rucker thing I was telling you about. So he in 1984, working for NBC, he said that he had dinner the night before with Bengals head coach Sam Weich and had done an interview with the coach. Weich later stated that he did not have dinner with Rucker and called him a blatant liar. Rucker later admitted he had made up the dinner and interview. It tarnished his broadcasting career. And I think in 2016, he was sentenced to 21 months in prison for embezzling money. But I thought the Rucker stuff was interesting. But back
Poor
to the
bastard
Patriots.
went to prison.
The interesting thing about the Patriots, they had some initial success when they
Yep.
first joined the AFL. But then, like from 67, they were like 3-10, 68, 4-10, 69, 4-10, 72 and 12, 71, 68, just lose. And they played at Boston University. They played at Fenway Park. They played at Harvard until finally Foxborough got built. So they were playing in these dinky, not really stadiums.
They were not a football town, from what I am told. Not at all. They were definitely fourth in that town behind
And then
the
you moved there, and they all of a sudden
Celtics,
become great.
Celtics, Red Sox, and Bruins. They got great right before I got there, and then they stayed
they knew
great.
you were
So where do
You
the
were
Patriots now rank in the hierarchy of Boston sports?
They're top number 1.
You think they're number 1 now?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think
So
they
if there was
dominate,
Red Sox or
if
Celtics?
there was a
too?
Patriots playoff
The Red
game,
Sox success has hurt them, actually.
Oh, yeah.
They won 4 World Series, and now they're kind of like, they're great. But, what really the mystique of the Red Sox and the Cubs was that they hadn't won in forever.
Right.
Now, the Cubs
That's
only
it.
won once, so they kind of still have that, we won once in 120 years now or whatever. The Red Sox won 4 in 14 years. They're no longer they are the Yankees. They're the enemy that they hated. So I just think that the Patriots, maybe not in a few years, but Bill and Tom just brought them to a whole new level.
So people would go to a Patriots game over a Celtics game
Yeah.
if they had. Wow, that's changed.
So
obviously.
the hierarchy now was Patriots, Celtics.
I would say Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, Bruins,
Okay.
but it's really close. I mean, the Bruins are probably 4th, but man, you'd get a lot of arguments from Bruins fans
Yeah.
that are like, no
'Cause
way,
they're rabid.
and they're good
They are.
every year.
Yes, and they
Every year.
they keep getting league-changing type players.
Yeah.
When you can go Patrice Bergeron to Marchand. What's his Brad
Marchand.
Marchand, yeah. You're really doing well. Mm-hmm.
I think the Patriots should bring back their old those old uniforms, with red
those old
jerseys,
unis with
I
those
like
white
the little
helmets, with
Patriot guy
the
on their
little
helmet.
Patriot guy
Love
on the
that
top.
helmet.
Patriot Jack.
Yeah.
Let's go on to some baseball. In the heat of the fight, the ALCS, Oakland and Baltimore, the Orioles ended the regular season red hot. They came into the playoffs having not lost a game since the 21st of September, and then in Game 1, the Sports Illustrated jinx showed up. Catfish Hunter was on the cover the week before, and he gets shelled by the by the Orioles. A 25-game winner in the regular season, but now the A's are down 1-0.
And it's a best-of-5 series.
Best of 5, yeah. And you lose home field advantage just like that. But in Game 2, Kenny Holtzman tosses a shutout. Sal Bando and Ray Fosse go deep to even the series. And it's 1-1 going back to Baltimore for Game 3. In the National League, Pirates and Dodgers, home team LA. They take the first 2 games. Don Sutton shuts out Pittsburgh in Game 1. Andy Messersmith and Mike Marshall, who else, combined to beat them 5-2 in Game 2, with Ron Cey being the offensive hero. He gets 4 hits, including a dinger.
Right, our guests are on there.
They just said that the Dodgers had held the Pirates scoreless the first 15 innings.
Yeah.
Just, and Pirates had a power-packed lineup.
His whole thing, when you play a best-of-5 series, anything can happen, because that's even more chancy. The best team could play the worst team and lose in a 5-game.
And who's the only player to hit the ball out of Dodger Stadium twice?
Willie Stargell?
Yep.
He
And me.
He
And
did.
you off.
That's no way to talk to teacher. Kareem and Walton about to both play in the NBA against each other. After his 4th exhibition game, Walton was asked post-game what he thought about the officiating. He looked down, took a pause, and like the UCLA kid he was, said, "No comment. I am not getting paid to evaluate the officiating." So, smart kid. I don't think you got fined back then for criticizing the officials the way
Probably
you do
warned.
now.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that is so funny is in all the things you read on Bill Walton from back in the day is how quiet and pensive
Exactly
he was.
what I was going to say. Because
Yeah.
they even mentioned it, that he was
Right.
reclusive. And you're like, that guy?
Right.
What's so interesting to me was that, these are exhibition games, they're
Right.
showing. It's the first time he played. And you get like over 13,000 in Dayton for the game.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the starters are actually playing in these exhibition games, which you
lot.
don't say today.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem had 34 points and 11 rebounds.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Walton
they were playing
had 15
hard.
and 16.
Well, put it this way. I don't know if it was in the next issue or coming up. Kareem misses the beginning of the season because he breaks his hand
Yeah.
hitting a post in
Yeah,
frustration
that's right.
in an exhibition game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they don't even play in the exhibition games.
No,
I
but-
mean that in the NBA they do. You got to get your legs up. I get that. So like
not like this.
So like the Warriors, or I don't know how many games they play now. 6, maybe they play 6 exhibition games. They also, they would play. They'd play double headers. They'd play they'd play in these
right.
Dayton, Ohio, and it'd be
Yep.
a great way to market the
That's
league.
what they
Sure,
used to
absolutely.
do. He used
Yeah.
to market the league by going to places that no one was there to see NBA
Right.
games, but now you can.
What I love, though, was after the exhibition game, so Kareem goes back to his
Thank
hotel
you.
room.
Yep.
Yeah, he's lying there watching TV when all of a sudden Walton, Sidney Wicks, two
Yep.
former Bruins, and LaRue Martin, they all of a sudden come and start playing as well. They come by and
Lay around
and
with 'em.
They're watching TV, and the sportscaster talks how badly Kareem had outplayed the rookie. For a moment, the room was quiet, and then Kareem stared at the ceiling and said, "Big deal."
The thing about that, when I
It
was
was a big
kid,
deal.
But
I
when I
mean,
was a kid, I
not a
thought they
big
all
deal.
hated each other. I thought all the other like the Lakers and Blazers, they didn't like each other. But then that sort of opens the, shows that they all were friends.
You know what I hate is why can't
love
you just
that.
say both Walton and Kareem are good? No, we got to compare them.
Yeah.
And we got to take one exhibition game, and that's
Well, and in the article it says Walton was quoted saying, "I said it before and I'll say it again. Kareem is the best I've ever seen. But here's the important part that he added. I learned something out there tonight." And Kareem agreed, saying, "It's always tougher for the younger man because the older man knows what he's doing. I could tell him, but you have to learn through experience. He's got to learn to face the basket. But he's quick and he rebounds well and he tries to help his teammates." So, even this great, by some people's standards, the greatest college basketball player ever, Walton, there's a learning curve when you're
Yeah.
going up against the all-time greats. And he got there. He got there.
And
But
just
it
so
takes a
amazing,
while.
Mark.
I would say Kareem's the all-time.
But
great,
Mark,
not
you got to
Walton.
see it all, man.
College
You would?
player, yeah.
Mark, you got to see it all. They were UCLA guys. How amazing is that? Go from
Well,
Kareem to Walton.
I never saw Lew Alcindor
Yeah,
play in college.
yeah.
I mean, about a little on TV, but I never saw him in person. The other guys I saw in person, and but I also remember watching on TV Walton's performance at Memphis in the NCAA finals when he scored like 44 points, and he was 21 for 22 from the field. And I never saw anything more dominant than that. That was the most dominant performance.
I'm just saying, just amazing. The same university gets arguably two of the greatest players back to back.
You could argue the Sam Gilbert thing, but it was a
either
pipeline.
Way. But I'm saying for a young guy like me, when you're watching it, but you're young, you don't know who Sam Gilbert is.
No,
I didn't
you
know.
just
I
know
just
who's
thought, man,
playing.
he's there. They're there.
You didn't know how they got there.
Yeah, I didn't care.
Yeah, no, it was quite a time, and now to see them playing against each other, that must have been strange.
Yeah.
Joining us now to talk about our cover boys, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton, breaking a tie with Larry Farmer and Curry Kirkpatrick, and becoming our first three-peater guest, the always great and insightful Hall of Fame writer Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe. Bob, thanks for putting up with us again.
No, what the hell? Every once in a while, you got to do what you got to do.
Just step down a little bit.
You know, Bob, I know when we think of you, we think NBA, but let's talk a little bit about college hoops from back then. Is it fair to say that Lew Alcindor and Bill Walton are the two greatest college basketball players ever? And if not, they're certainly in the conversation.
Bill Walton, actually, let's start with Kareem, with the then Lew Alcindor at UCLA, and then Kareem. It's no question he has the greatest start to finish career in American basketball history. When you consider his Power Memorial record, his UCLA record, and then his NBA championship record. He lost, I believe, like 2 games in 4 years, going back to Power Memorial and UCLA. No one's had a career in which he's lived up to the hype as well as Lew Alcindor. Bill Walton was not well known outside of California. As a matter of fact, the bigger star in his year was Tom McMillan. And there was a lot of, hey, wait a minute, we got a guy out here too, reaction from California after SI canonized Tom McMillan. But everyone who followed basketball closely knew about this phenomenon at Power Memorial in New York City, this 7-footer Lew Alcindor. And then his interesting decision to go to UCLA at the time, but people weren't used to going bi-coastal in those days. And he went, he spurned all the Eastern schools and went to UCLA, which of course was coming off its first 2 championships. In terms of NCAA, Alcindor reigned supreme. He won 3. Bill won 2. And I know, having been a friend of Bill's, that it pained him to his dying day, losing that North Carolina State game. If for no other reason, then they had it under control. And they let a 7-point lead evaporate. Even with all due respect to North Carolina State, I think it's one of those deals where if they played 10 times, UCLA would have won 7 or so. But that was the day that North Carolina State prevailed. So if Bill had 3, they could have a friendly argument, couldn't they, about who was greater? But then you tack on Kareem's NBA career with his multiple championships, and Bill had 2, but one in which he was coming off a bench. So Kareem would have trumped him, I'm afraid, in all the final arguments.
Yeah. Bill was like you said, not as well known coming out of high school, and yet UCLA continues. They have those huge long streaks. You're 3,000 miles away back then, knee deep in the Celtics. What was it like for a sports guy, just a sports fan, I'm talking, to go to bed at night and wake up the next morning and go, gosh, wonder how UCLA did last night again? I mean, was it one of the first things you would check to see if they were winning again and again and again? It was news when they lost a game.
I was on top of it because I was raised as a college basketball fan. My NBA interest in education became after I was a writer for the Boston Globe. I mean, I went to some games in Boston. You go to Boston and you're a basketball fan, and you're in the height. When I got there, the Celtics had already won 6 championships. And I got there in 64. And of course, I made the pilgrimage to the Boston Garden. We're coming up to the 60th anniversary next week of my first game. I have the ticket stub of it. And they beat the Pistons in the Garden on October 17th, 1964. And as a matter of fact, the night they took up the floor at the Boston Garden after the final game in 1995, when Orlando eliminated them in the playoffs, I had a photographer take me back to my seat because I knew what seat it was. I had my ticket stub, and take my picture looking down as they taking up the floor for the final time. It's hanging in my living room. Anytime you stop by, I'll be happy to show it to you. And so,
See you tomorrow.
but I was still a college guy first and foremost. At Boston College, I was the play-by-play broadcaster for the basketball station, for the radio station, 4 years, all 4 years, and I was a huge college fan. So I was following what was going on with all NCAA competition and very well aware of UCLA. And as a matter of fact, I love to tell the story. In 1964, when they were preparing to play the championship game against Duke, I was accompanying my mother and aunt on a trip to Florida during school vacation. And we were stopping, as luck would have it, in the state of North Carolina. I forget exactly where. And I asked them, this is before television dominated the world. And I said, yeah, is the game going to be on tonight? And they said, yeah. And I said, what channel? And they said, every channel. They may have been kidding, but so I watched that game on TV, and I watched them the next year against Michigan, and I was all over the NCAA tournament. That was a very, very important thing for me. So, and then later on, when I was working for the Globe and out there covering the Celtics on the coast, it just so happened that I happened to be in LA at a time when UCLA was playing USC, the year that USC only lost 2 games, both to UCLA, and the game at the sports arena, I got a ticket for, but first of all, I applied for a credential, and they were booked. They couldn't get me a credential to sit at the table, but the SID told me, if you can get a ticket and get in, we'll get you a credential to interview people, to do the locker room. And so I went to the agency. I used to name it. It was right across from the Coliseum, and I paid $20. Which was exorbitant, but I put it on the Global Defense account, and bought the ticket. And then I presented myself to the SID when I got inside the building, and so I saw that game. UCLA killed them, and Walton had a fantastic game. And of course, after the game, he didn't talk. He didn't talk to him. And this is in his. I guess in those days he was protected by Wooden, but also he had the stutter problem, and he had conquered it. And he was not media friendly in college at all. Of course, later on, you couldn't shut him up, and we know that. But those days you didn't talk to him. So, but I'll never forget watching him in warm-ups, and he radiated intensity. I said, it jumped out at me looking at him in the layup line, and then the look on his face, the intensity, and he just completely destroyed the SC that night.
That's perfect, because that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, that's the 74 season, right? So that would have been... Yeah,
that's the year that before the NCAA expanded, and poor SC, they couldn't go anywhere. And,
right.
And am I mistaken? They were so distraught about all this that they turned down an NIT invitation.
I think that's correct. I think that's correct.
Thank you. So that's this. So you talk about explain that to somebody today. The world, they can't understand the world we lived in then. But this is 2 years prior. 74, the first year of the NCAA expansion was 75, 76.
Well, it's interesting because the 60s and 70s, it was so different in terms of sports. You had to win your league to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
There was no wild card.
And only 2 leagues had tournaments, the ACC and the Southern Conference. They're the only 2 that had tournaments in which everybody else, you won your regular season, you got in, period, and everybody else went home or went to the NIT. But that USC team was very good but they couldn't compete with UCLA when they had to do it.
Do you think the dominance of UCLA basketball in the 60s and 70s is what elevated college basketball? I know the game of the century did also, but having a dominant program like that.
I do. I think this is this outlier phenomenon in all-American sport. This team kept winning and winning and winning and winning, and of course winning with very different teams. That's the great thing about it. They won the first championship based on a great backcourt of Hazard and Goodrich, and they won the next championship, 3 championships with around Bill Walton, around Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and his center play, flanked by obviously a lot of great players, Lynn Shackelford and Mike Warren and Edgar Lacey and blah 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 blah, but and Dave Myers. But then they keep winning with the Wicks Row team and Steve Patterson at center.
Mm-hmm.
I that was my first Final Four, and I covered that. So, yeah, it was remarkable. Wooden was not wedded to any style of play necessarily. He just taught basketball.
So the cover of the magazine has, exhibition game, Walton versus Kareem, the first time they've met.
In Dayton, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
And it was, it was promoted by Don Nelson.
Oh, God.
Don Nelson promoted that game. Look it up.
But my question was, what was the anticipation of, Kareem coming to the league, or Lew at the time, everyone said, oh, wow. But Walton coming in the league, did they expect dominance, or what did they expect from him?
Well, I mean, they expected greatness out of him, of course. And I think no question, particularly because, he was coming off the famous 21 for 22 game, right?
In Memphis.
Yeah. So, they expected dominance. That was of course, that they did lose in that course of 74 to North Carolina State. So I shouldn't say that. I misspoke. I was off a year. But his reputation was very high, obviously very high. And Kareem was in his zenith at that point. And so I think, and the idea of the UCLA guys and all that was a fun aspect of it. But I think people were to see if how well Bill could compete with the guy, the man, and Wilt's retired now. It's Kareem is the unquestioned great center. There's no direct challenge for his supremacy. There's great centers, Gilmore and Lanier and Thurmond, etc., still around, but we all knew who the man was. It was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Your boy Dave Cowens, he could give Kareem.
Oh, Dave, of course, and it's interesting. They didn't get obviously didn't get to play against each other very much because but that was the one. Dave really had made up his mind that he wanted to show Walton something. I think it was about as Dave's perception of Bill's politics, and I'm not saying Dave was a staunch right winger or necessarily, but I think he just had a thing, and he manufactured a thing about Bill Walton. But he didn't dominate him, as I recall. He didn't make him look bad or anything like that. No, he couldn't. He wouldn't done. But he really got up for the games. There's few games that they played against each other.
How big? We live in such a world now of hype. Everything is hyped through social media and all that. Back then, how big was it that Walton and Kareem were finally going to face each other in the pros? Was it hyped up like it?
I don't think it was ultra hyped. I mean, I don't remember. It was important, and I remember looking forward to that exhibition, and of course, in part because I said of all things, Don Nelson was the promoter, and he was always very entrepreneurial. But anyway, it was big, but I'm not saying it was colossal. It wasn't as big as, like, for example, as Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King. Believe me, I mean, that's a phenomenon of phenomenons. We'll never have anything like that again. But so it didn't reach that level. It was a competitive level thing, and I guess it was enhanced a little bit by the whole UCLA connection, naturally.
Bob, you said on our show that Milwaukee Kareem was better than Lakers Kareem. All I ever saw was Lakers Kareem, and he was great. How good was he as a Buck?
He was scarily good, and he did everything. I mean, he rebounded with more authority. He never, for a fact that when they beat the Celtics in the championship in 1985 and in the Garden, and after that first game was the Memorial Day Massacre, and the Celtics beat them 148-114. Kareem had a terrible game, and he sat around in a hotel. That was on Monday, Memorial Day. Next game went until Thursday, and he sat around for 2 days in a hotel room stewing about it and vowing to himself he was going to play better. Went out and had 17 rebounds, which was the most rebounds he had in 10 years in a game. Now, in the very beginning of his career, he led the league, I'm sure, early on, but he kind of was indifferent to it in LA. He wasn't the same total force. And, as time went on, he passed the metaphorical torch to Magic, as the leader of the team, and by the mid-'80s. But in the beginning, I mean, he was frightful. I mean, young and vigorous and just impossible scorer, to stop. I mean, he was the man, and there's no question. But he just got older, and he had a more specifically defined role in LA. It didn't have to be all about him. And yet, remember though, Pat Riley kept reminding people about him. Though he wouldn't let people canonize Magic or Worthy or anyone at all as time went on, because he was the captain, of course. He wanted him to be regarded as the leader. And Riley was very adamant about that, about how that Kareem was still the greatest, even though no longer we knew that Magic and Worthy were, flexing their own muscles.
Sure.
Hey, the first time they met in the finals, wasn't it in 1977? And didn't the Blazers kind of dominate Kareem and the Lakers in that finals?
Yeah, the Blazers had put everything together by that time in that season and figured it all out. We were more concerned about the 76ers. That was the story out here. The super team with Dr. J and McGinnis and et cetera, and Darryl Dawkins, the young Darryl Dawkins, and so forth. They had Lloyd. He was not yet World B. He was still Lloyd Free, I believe, at that time. And their flamboyance as a team, that got our attention. So we were more focused on them than what was going on out west. I mean, to us, whoever showed up in the finals, fine. We're more interested in how Philly's going to do.
I never got that. I know as a kid, I had heard so much about him, but you were close enough. You just mentioned him, Julius Erving. What was he like to see in person in those days?
Well, I go back to Julius Erving at University of Massachusetts, and I can tell you that when he was a freshman, it was still freshman basketball in those days. They hadn't, that there was a lot of hype that came floating eastward from campus at Amherst, and I had a friend that was at UMass at the time, and just raving about Julie. He was not. Remember, he wasn't Dr. J yet. That's a nickname that came in summer in Harlem after but he wasn't yet. He was just Julius Erving and Julie Erving at there. I saw him the first time I saw him. He comes to Boston College, and with some sufficient hype, and I watched him, and he was impressive, and and that's fine. And then I got the stat sheet, 26 and 18. I said, "Oh my God, that was better than I thought." I trusted the 18. In fact, when he came out into the ABA, the one thing I promised the world that I tipped the one, this guy can rebound. I thought of him in rebounding first, and of course the dunk, he couldn't dunk in college, and I couldn't, because so thanks to Lew Alcindor, and therefore it was interesting. It wasn't, you didn't frame him by that so much, but anyway, he goes to the ABA and he takes the world by storm. And I remember running into Al Bianchi, who was his coach in Virginia, Squires, and telling me how great this kid was and how happy they were with him. And we all know his ABA legacy, the championships and just, the dunks and the coast to coast and everything else. And so, and I got to watch him obviously an awful lot in the NBA. And the one thing about Irving that was his characteristic of so many of the truly great players, he got better and better. He was only a shooter when he came to the league. He made himself into he went back and into the gym and he made himself into a shooter. By the way, his last basket in his career was a three. People don't realize that, which is kind of antithetical to what you thought of him, right?
Right.
It was in Milwaukee. I covered it, and I remember it, and it was a three.
So now you're talking Dr. J and Bill Walton in the NBA Finals. It was the Blazers who ended up showing up from the West.
Oh yeah.
What do you remember from that Finals?
Maurice Lucas versus Darryl Dawkins. When Darryl Dawkins found out there was tougher people in the world than him. Maurice Lucas, Bill Walton's favorite teammate ever, named his son Luke after Maurice Lucas. People maybe don't know that, but that's a fact. And just totally could never say enough good things about Maurice Lucas. This was viewed. I know what I don't know if I wrote it. I may have. I doubt it. But I know I was saying it, and I don't know whether I said it in a public forum or not. But here's the way I framed it, because of the difference in the team play aspect of the perceived team play aspect of the Trailblazers versus the perceived one-on-one, your turn, my turn, undisciplined persona of the Sixers. I said, if the Sixers win, it will be as if Hitler has successfully invaded England in 1940.
Wow.
So you wouldn't put that out there today,
Yeah.
In this the comments like that don't fly anymore. Hitler references don't sell very well, so you wouldn't do it. But I know I said that frequently in private, if not public. I was definitely rooting against Philly in that when I was rooting for Portland. And of course, they had their run of a year. The next year they were 50-10 when he got hurt and everything started to fall apart. And they were as beautiful a half-court synchronization team as we've ever seen. Those teams and the Knicks of the famous Knicks teams played basketball at their style the best I've ever seen anybody play that style of basketball. And Walton was the fulcrum. He was the centerpiece of the whole thing.
Is it fair to say then, Bob, I wouldn't, Bill's not like a great offensive force, he was a good offensive player, don't get me wrong, but his strength was he was a great basketball player. He reminds me of a bigger version almost of Havlicek, the way you described him. He could do everything very well.
Well, his greatest thing was, two things. One, the passing, he ran, it was unchallenged in my mind as the greatest passing center in NBA history until Mr. Jokic has shown up to enter fully into that discussion. Okay. I will give, and Jokic even can throw the outlet pass, which was a dead, was a extinct species. The only person in the league that was doing it with any skill and reliability for the previous years was Kevin Love. And but Walton's passing was extraordinary, and his rebound technique. I never really studied it when it dawned on me when I watched him in Boston. He had a rebound. His timing on the defensive boards was so good that he could. It was just he went up and he could get the ball right off the rim at the exact instant by scooping it like as if you're scooping crumbs off the table into your hand, and really flirt with goaltending. But the timing was so good, and then quite often before he even hit the ground, he had turned to throw the outlet pass. There was nobody like that, nobody, and there isn't anybody. And Jokic doesn't do that. Nobody does that, but he did. And his technique, right? He was a very technique. They used to kid him. I know Larry and Kevin. I think Kevin's the one, McGale, that used to kid him about his turnaround jump shot. He called it his 1955 bank shot. I think he called it. But he did have a nice little turnaround jumper. And but he could average he can get you 25 at any time, but wasn't why he was out there. That was a kind of incidental sometimes, except for that night against Memphis. It was quite incidental, and that's for sure. Just right, he would help you in every phase of the game, and there was something about his competitive spirit too that certainly inspired his teammates.
So you get to see Walton when he's in college, and you don't get to know him. You don't get to do much around him because he's not doing the media. You got to know him as a player later on. What kind of, not just as a player, we know that. What kind of man was he, and what kind of relationship did you have with him?
I had an excellent relationship. I'm very proud of it, and he was a worldly guy. He's obviously interested in politics, reading. He'd tell you a book recommendation. I spent time with him last December. I was doing work for the Larry Bird Museum, which has now been opened a couple of months in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I was doing interviews of various people for exhibits they're going to have an oral exhibit. And he left me with a book recommendation. He would care about a lot of things. And just from listening to his college color broadcasts, the State Pash is the guy we want to do. I'm sure he's got 10,000 stories hanging out with with Walton the last couple of years, but I used to kid him. I said, "Hey, tonight, Bill, how about talking about basketball? Not about the Great Northwest and the salmon flow of the Columbia River and all that." And he would rhapsodize about this and that, and then he'd go off on a tangent about the Pacific Coast Conference and the Conference of Champions. It killed him. You can imagine the demise of the Pacific Coast Conference, how much it bothered Bill Walton. I mean, it was almost in tears. So, but he was just a fun guy, a fascinating human being to be around, and full of life. Anybody will tell you that. Just enthusiasm about life, and it was so much fun to be around him. Just to hang out.
There's another common thread between Kareem and Walton, and that had nothing to do with basketball. It was music. They both had this passion for music.
Kareem, of course, is the son of a jazz musician. and who was a trombone player, I believe, but he also couldn't get full-time gigs. He was a motorman, or with the New York Transit Authority too, I think. But he was, in fact, at heart a jazz musician, and he introduced Kareem to the world of mainstream jazz. And he famously had a collection destroyed in a fire in his house, and people rushed forward to try to make up and replace his collection for him. It was so unknown. I had one conversation with him the year he retired. He was on basically he did the farewell tour bit in the 88-89 season.
Yes.
He did the farewell tour bit, and they were coming to Boston, and so they sent me out to LA. They were going to be coming east with 3 stops along the way, and for me to get a big feature story to accompany his final trip to Boston. And I finally sat down with me on one of the legs of the flight for the interview, and we got talking about music. And I talked about my favorites since this and that, and then he said, "Oh, you like me? You're like my father. You like those old standards. You like that? Well, it's true, I do." And anyway, we had a nice conversation about music. Oh, we love music, and of course, everybody is aware of Walton's incredible fascination with the Grateful Dead and his association with the Grateful Dead. And I've been to his house, on multiple occasions, and I've got pictures which I wish I could show you. But the first floor of Bill Walton's house was not like the first floor of anybody's house you've ever seen or ever will know. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, it's so many artifacts of things, but real live official Grateful Dead instruments, drum sets, guitars, stuff, and he was completely infatuated with the Grateful Dead, as you know. He claimed to have seen them 1,000 times, and he was with them at the pyramids in Egypt when they played there. He was there, and so no one will outshine Bill Walton's devotion to and to him. Jerry Garcia was like a saint, but they do share that, but not the same music. Now, Walton's other one is Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Big Dylan guy. In fact, he's got a big poster on one of the bedrooms in his house. I slept in it, the Bob Dylan bedroom. I slept in the Dylan bedroom. So.
Most people talk about sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom, but you slept
I slept in the Dylan bedroom.
Bob, can you recall, is there anyone, you mentioned briefly the speech impediment that Bill had in college, and then wouldn't also, you couldn't talk as a freshman, and there were all these things that limited his access. Can you recall a transformation like that from a kid who was that quiet and introverted to this unbelievable extrovert? I mean, just a complete transformation.
The only thing I can think of as you speak is thinking about it as a transformation is all this stuff was bottled up. All this knowledge about history and politics and music and sports and everything, food, architecture, geology, all this stuff was bottled up. He had absorbed it all, and now once he and I don't know the specifics, but once he conquered the stuttering issue, it's like, and people, and this is a standard joke among people that knew him. He never shut up. It was like he couldn't get it out enough. And it was fun. But I think that's really what it was. I think all this stuff was bottled up, and once he could finally show himself to the world what he knew and what he loved, and encourage other people to take part in life's activity. He had another great obsession, bikes. That he was a cyclist.
Right.
I believe he authored a book or co-authored a book on cycling, and so there's one other. And when he got into something, oh my God, he's into it, and cycling was one thing he was into for a long time.
Bob, does that therefore, the fact that he had all this stuff that he might have kept under wraps for so long and then it comes out, does that make it harder? How hard was it, the news you heard when you heard about Bill's passing?
Well, I was particularly shocked because, as I just mentioned to you, I had seen him in December, and now he was hobbling. He's had mobility issues with, he always had to, but he hobbled in with something. But once he sat down, he was fantastic, and also he looked great. I've been showing pictures that I took that day of him to people and saying, does this look like a man who was terminally ill 3 months ago? When he died in May, and that I was there on December 21st. I've got the pictures in my phone, and I show them to people, and I say, he looked, and it looks great. and he did look great. And I had no idea that he was really, that he was, carrying something that was to have him kill him 3 months later, 4 months, 5 months later, whatever. So, no, I was stunned about that, and it hit me hard because I just felt, and I was in contact with him afterward, texting and having fun with commenting on games and stuff. And so, I felt, I'm not claiming I was an intimate. I wasn't an intimate, but I was in the orbit, and I told a story. I wrote a column. And you'll love this. I wrote a column about him, and actually, when I demanded to write a column about him at the Globe, I mean, let's face it. And I told the story. And I was fortunate enough in 2015 to receive the Red Smith Award from the Associated Press Sports Editors. It's an annual award for lifetime service. Okay, and I was given that award, and it was being presented in San Diego. So guess who I asked? Would you like to introduce me? Because he literally lived 10 minutes away, literally. So he does it, and he gives me this rather effusive introduction, and it was standard Bill Walton, totally over the top. You would have thought I had conquered cancer, solved all the world problems, unified the Middle East, and a few other things, And so when it's all over, I'm going in an elevator back up to my room, and there were a couple of the other guests who were there. And one of them says to me, "Geez, Bob, I didn't know we came to honor Gandhi." So I said, who wouldn't want a friend like that? He was a pleasure to know, and a hell of a pleasure to watch play basketball. I'll tell you that.
So it's that time again. It's time for 50-50, our trivia question, and no Boston actors today. So here's the question. So Kareem is most well known for the movie Airplane when you think of just, work, even though his favorite was Game of Death with Bruce Lee. But anyway, Airplane is the one he's remembered with. So there's a line where the kid's bugging him in the cockpit where he says, "You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar." And he goes, "No, I'm Roger Murdoch. I'm a pilot." True or false? He then grabs the kid and tells him that you tell your old man to drag these two players up and down the court for 48 minutes.
I know one, Bob Lanier.
And the other one was?
I don't know. I only remember Lanier.
Okay, so the question would be, was Walton the other guy?
I always thought, okay, I didn't realize there was another one. For some reason, the Daubers, we knew him. I knew him too.
Right.
Dauber stuck in my head because of, first of all, big, 6'11", 270, whatever he was.
Right.
So if the other one was Walton, he wasn't quite the same physical specimen as Bob Lanier. He doesn't fit the mold. I don't know. He could have picked somebody else, I guess. I don't know. But was it Walton? I don't know.
What's your guess? Say yes or no.
I'll say yes.
You are correct. Like the exact line is, tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up the court for 48 minutes. He even said Walton before Lanier.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So, but I do remember Lanier. I can tell you that. I chuckled naturally with that one.
Maybe it was a UCLA connection. He wanted to get a UCLA buddy.
Yeah.
Bob, at some point you go from a writer covering these athletes to having personal relationships with them. You've mentioned before what great men Cousy and Havlicek and Cowens, and I guess we can put Walton in that category as well. When does it transform from you from just covering athletes to these friendships?
I can only be myself. I mean, some people don't get involved that way. They're very proud of being. I mean, I'm a human being first and a writer second. All right, and that never changed. And so I wound up being friendly with John Havlicek, and I did his book, and friendly with Cowens, who retired in my hotel room. Nobody else has a story like that. And Paul Silas was somebody I really admired and loved, and I had these relationships, and because basis of it was a love of basketball. I could convey. They knew I loved the game, and I tried to assure people that I really loved the game. So it's always started with that. But I don't know. I just I'm a social animal. I just didn't see, and I thought I could separate. The journalist, and when time to write the story, put the journalist hat on. And if the guy played a bad game, hopefully you would have the guts to say he played a bad game, but I mean, it was just natural for me to I mean, when I met Paul Westphal, I knew it was like a younger brother. I felt we hit it off immediately. And so these things came natural to me in the beginning, but I was young. And now I did, if you date it, well, no, Walton, oh my God, Walton was late. No. So, I hit it off well with Larry from the beginning, and that was good. So that was very fruitful too. Now, Cousie's different because I looked up to Cousie. I met him when I was 18 years old as a Boston College freshman. And he was the coach of the basketball team, and now I'm the new student announcer, and so I have to interact with him. And that's how long I've known Bob Cousy, who, by the way, is 94 and perfectly sound up here, perfectly 100%, which is a trade-off I'll make any day. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'd sure love to hear that story on Dave Cowens retired in your hotel room.
We were in Terre Haute, and in October of 1980. Why are we in Terre Haute? Because Larry Bird is now entering year 2, and they're going to have exhibition games played in the state in 3 different Indiana cities. That makes sense, doesn't it? And we hang out in Terre Haute. The first night they were in Indianapolis. Then we went to Terre Haute, where it was going to be a game at Indiana State, and then there was going to be a game in Evansville against the Bulls, and it's only about 40 miles south on US 41. So anyway, Bert, Cowens is not having a particularly great exhibition season. And the night in Indianapolis, he had played not well at all. And so now we're in Terre Haute, and they have a morning shoot around on the day that they're going to go playing the Bulls in Evansville. I go to the shoot around. I come back to my room. It's noontime, and I'm on the phone talking to Paul Silas, who's out in Seattle. And we're talking about his new life in Seattle and so on and so forth. And there's a knock on the door. I open the door, and Dave Cowens is standing there in his practice uniform, holding yellow legal pad papers. I say, "Hey, come on in. What's up?" And I say, "Hey, you want to talk to Silas?" So he gets on the phone. They chat a little bit. Okay, they hung up. I guess fine. All right, Dave, what's up? He hands me this sheets of yellow, about 3 or 4 pages. I read it. It's a retirement statement. He's retiring right here and now, today. Whoa. So what do you want with me? Well, I want you to edit it. I forget the exact phraseology, but put it in order, edit it, and then can you get it in the paper? We had an afternoon paper still in 1980. I said, yeah, I can do that. And I said, give me, and I also knew that he could write fairly well. He had done something in the Globe. So I knew he was quite literate, and it wasn't going to be a hard thing to worry about. I wouldn't have to do wholesaling. It's going to be easy. So, on the way out, he turns around and comes back and says, "Hey, do you mind if I call Red first?" I'm not making this up. So he dials the office. The Red Auerbach secretary was Mary Faraday. He said, "Hi, Mary, it's Dave. Can I talk to Red?" "Hey, Red, it's Dave. Remember what we talked about the other night?" "Well, I'm doing it." "Okay, I'll see you in Boston." Click. So I write, what came out was a little paragraphing, a little punctuation, but not too much. It was very good. So what we came up with was about 85% Cowens and 15% Ryan, or 90-10 even. And we got it in the afternoon paper. Now the story is not over. So about 4 o'clock, the bus is getting ready to leave to go to Evansville. And he hasn't told the team yet. So he gets on the bus, and I have this verbatim from ear witnesses. He gets on the bus, and the first thing he does is go up to Robert Parrish, the new acquisition, who was not playing well at all. And Bill Fitch is busting his ass, and he's not responding too well. He's not in the shape he needed to be in to have a tough training camp with Bill Fitch. And Cowens basically said to him, "You're going to be fine. You can do the job. I'm going to trust you. You're going to be great. Don't worry about it, okay?" And ML Carr, supposedly being the prankster, he said, "Hey, Dave, you done? Yeah, get off our bus." So he gets off the bus. And now the bus, we waved to the bus goodbye. "All right, Dave, what's up?" "Well, I want to go home." And home was Newport, Kentucky at the time. It's where he was born and raised. And he still was single. He hadn't gotten married yet. And he was going back home. And, but Dave being Dave, didn't have any credit cards on him and didn't have a lot of money on him. So I rent the Avis car and hand him the keys. That's just my story.
Wow.
Wow.
Now the question is, did he return it on time? Did you incur any?
Did he
I
dose it?
did not have any complications. He did his duty. But that's how I opened up my book, Scribe, my autobiography. That was the opening, to get people's attention.
Yeah.
I do think that's a unique story that no other writer has. So I'm proud of that one. But that's the relationship I had with Dave Cowens,
I mean, it seems to me, Bob, that was a relationship that you had with a bunch of players, and it all stems from the fact that they trusted you. And
that's what I tell young people, that you have to earn the trust. And here's what you are. And now I hadn't articulated this until about 5 years ago. And I articulated, which is the following. If you're a beat person and you're covering a team, and whether it's the pros or a college, okay, and you have a beat, you are a salesperson. And what the commodity you're selling is you. And you are selling yourself to the players, to the coaching staff, and the administrators, the GM if it's basketball, or the AD if it's college. And you do this by, your actions and your present, your courtesy and your knowledge and your feel, but you're selling yourself, and to earn that trust. And I just did it naturally, but that I articulate. I think that's a fair way to put it, and because that's what you are. You're a salesperson.
Well, whatever you're selling, Bob, I'm buying, and I think I can speak for the Mark as well. So, as always, my friend, appreciate your time joining us. And whenever we want to talk about basketball the way it was and the way it should be, you're always at the top of our list. So, thanks for coming on Past Our Prime again.
Well, I appreciate those words. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you, Bob.
You're the best.
Thanks.
Bob Ryan, Hall of Fame writer for the Boston Globe. And I can't think of anyone when you're talking Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who you'd rather want to have on as a guest.
To be honest with you, I love his basketball knowledge, obviously, but he's done so many amazing things that almost there's part of you just wants to talk about those things.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Woolen Room. You hung out with Paul Westphal. I mean, those are the things I look at. Like, that's so cool. I mean, yeah, I love the basketball knowledge, but he's been around it for so long. So he's just knee deep in great stories about. And then we went out and we had dinner. That just some of these, like the Cowens, is just such a great story. Yeah. I just love this.
Because I'll tell you what, he's a 3-timer. He's about to be a 4-timer. I can't get enough.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. We've been very fortunate with guys like that.
What do we got next?
People section, couple of good ones. Mark.
Well, God, where to choose. I guess I'll start with the thing about Ken Norton. So obviously right now, we're getting ready for the Ali Foreman fight in Africa. And that's got all the attention of the world. But Ken Norton was busy too. He was becoming an actor. And he was in this movie called Mandingo. And look it up. It was one of these cult movies, like, one of these guilty pleasures. He plays during like the Civil War as a slave, but he has, I guess, sex with a lot of people in the movie. But anyway, Saturday Night Live did a spoof.
What's it called?
Mandingo. I have never watched the movie though, Mandingo.
Ah,
that's one of the few things you've never watched.
Yeah,
You've watched everything.
I know.
To the list now. There's 3.
Yes,
there really?
There's 3. But Norton predicted that Ali's a fine man, but that Foreman would win the fight.
Right.
So, not only did his acting career not take off, but his
stick
procrastination skills in.
Not quite Buster Douglas versus Tyson, but everybody thought that Foreman was going to knock Ali block off. And it didn't happen. What do you got, Billy?
Just Evel Knievel. His helicopter pilot's name, whatchamacallum.
I know.
Really? Whatcha? It's a WATCHA.
Whatcha?
McCollum. Whatchamacallum. What's the pilot's name? Whatchamacallum. No, give me his name. Whatchamacallum.
First base.
No, just what's his name? Whatchamacallum. Yeah, it's that.
Gary Cleverly, center fielder for the Reno Silver Sox of the California League, was given a watch for being the team's most popular player. The next night, he was fined for being late.
Well, they gave him a watch. They didn't say it worked.
That's right. Broken.
Too good.
Here's this old watch we
That's
found on the
good.
street, but it's yours, okay?
Don't be late.
College football. Lose weight and play Auburn. The Tigers could starve an opponent to death. Their sturdy defense has allowed only 10 points and has shut out Tennessee and Miami. Auburn beat Miami in a thriller. 3-0. Wow. Canes had 166 yards of total offense. This drive sums up their day, all right? So their second quarter, 1st and 10 at the Tiger 20. So they're in field goal range, okay? They've driven 60 yards. So they got the ball on their 20. Now they're on the Auburn 20. 5 plays later, following a penalty, 2 incomplete passes, a sack of the quarterback, and a bobbled snap by the punter, Auburn took over at the Hurricanes 41. They lost 40 yards, basically, and the ball.
Well, okay, they started the season 4-0. How many points did they allow in those first 4 games?
16.
3.
10. 10
Wow.
points in the first 4 games.
7 and 6. God, and I right in the middle.
Well, I should have known 10 since I just said they had only allowed 10 points.
Oh, and that shows you how closely I listened to you.
That's good.
I tuned you out.
I thought maybe
tuned out too.
I thought maybe they had played another game or something like that.
Mark had a trick question.
Florida State had lost 15 in a row. Man, I guess the Seminoles really sucked back in the 70s, and I guess they do again now. But they brought in some reinforcements to this game against Baylor. They some guys on the sideline to see if that might help them break the streak.
Burt Reynolds, who's an alumni.
Former Florida State halfback.
Yep. Lee Majors,
Yep.
who I think it was his cousin or Johnny Majors, the famous coach, at Penn State.
Also married to a beautiful woman at one point.
He's related to Lee
Fawcett.
Majors. I think it might be his uncle or cousin.
And then a guest on our show.
Larry Zonka.
That's right.
All came to support him. And they actually led 17-0 at the half
did.
against Baylor.
And then would lose 21-17.
17.
But did you like the sideline sign?
What did it say?
Grin and bear it, Bert. Because
Yeah.
he had done the
Playgirl
Playgirl
magazine.
magazine.
Do you know I had a roommate that did a
Did you really?
nude spread in Playgirl magazine? And I had another roommate.
And he's going right now, hey, I had a roommate who went streaking all the time.
No, but he was a roommate and then he wasn't. And then another one of the roommates one day came in and said, "Did you see this Playgirl magazine? Blah, blah, blah is in it." And I'm thinking, why do you have a Playgirl magazine?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If you guys are in Playboy or Playgirl, I'm not buying the magazine. That's nothing against you guys. Just not going that route.
Well, I think if we're in it, it's a reason why there isn't one anymore.
There's some serious issues going
But
on
in
there.
one, I'm not going to top the story. That's not fair. But when I was at junior college, there was a girl I wanted to date. We got to know each other, and it didn't work out. I think I was shy and scared, whatever. But years later, I'm doing radio up at the station, and a guy comes in, and the girl comes in and goes, she goes, "You hear what's going on campus?" I said, "Why?" I said, "No." She goes, "It's in an uproar. One of the girls was the Playboy centerfold. It was the girl that I was going to date years before." Yeah.
Good taste.
Yeah, she didn't look what she looked like in when I saw her. But
No.
Well, they airbrushed that thing.
whatever they airbrushed it correctly. So,
And Bill was in an uproar.
Yeah. I thought, damn it, man, another loss. I'm still batting 000s.
How about USC that week? They beat Iowa 41-3, and they just dominated that game, Bill.
They did. Let's see. Iowa equaled USC's passing yardage of 114, made 21 first downs to the Trojans' 15, and outrushed USC 284 yards to 142. Iowa ran 91 offensive plays to USC's 44, but what was the score?
Yeah, 41-3. And here's
USC
why.
win.
Charles Phillips, a 6'3" senior, set an NCAA single-game record for return yardage with fumbles.
Oh, my gosh.
He had an 83-yard return for a touchdown and a 98-yard return for a touchdown.
Is that still a record?
I gotta think it's
it would be.
close,
Yeah.
right? 181 yards. It's pretty tough to top that. So baseball. Where did all the homers go? The regular season is
You're not
over.
doing bridge?
We're not doing bridge
Oh,
again this week.
That's a bridge too far for us
wanted
to
to make
cross.
sure we're not doing the bridge.
I'm tired of talking about
Yeah, I figured.
Hank Aaron, and I never realized this, but this these are the kind of little nuggets I find interesting in this magazine. He was all set to retire after the 1974 season, and he would have finished his career with whatever he had home run wise at that time. But there was now a DH in the American League. So instead of retiring, he went to the AL and played 2 more seasons with the Milwaukee Brewers.
That's right.
Some of his glory years with the Milwaukee Braves.
Going back to Milwaukee to finish his career. So I just thought that was interesting that we got 2 more years out of Hank because he didn't play the outfield anymore.
Who led the league in homers that year in '74? Do you guys have any idea on how many they hit?
74.
Mike Schmidt, 36.
Very good. That's correct.
Right.
For the National
Look
League.
at that.
36 by Mike. And who in the American League?
I know this. It was Dick Allen.
Yep.
32.
Wow.
Yep.
And
you're right.
And he quit.
Right.
You're retired.
I'm
retired.
2 or 3 weeks.
I'm retired.
I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah. When did what was it? Aaron Judge got to 32. Like what?
Oh, like
June,
yeah,
July.
But you know the good thing about this show, because you just said Henry Aaron with the Brewers. What's that thing you sent me? Immaculate Conception?
Immaculate Reception.
I play that every day. They had a Braves Brewers guy. That little you put the players in.
Right.
And I thought, who's played with the Braves and the Brewers? And I thought, oh yeah, Henry Aaron. This show, because
Perfect.
Good. It's a good little thing.
Lou Brock finished the season with a stolen base record, 118. We've talked about that. Only 2 pitchers in the NL win 20 games, Phil Niekro and Andy Messersmith. Your batting title winner in the National League, Ralph Garr, 353. Johnny Bench leads the league in RBIs with 129. Attendance was down in 74, but there are plenty of rookies to help with that in the future. Most notably, George Brett of the Royals and Robin Yount of the Brewers. So a couple of good ones make their debuts in 74. Rod Carew hits 364 to win the batting title, his 3rd in a row. He's the first guy to win 3 batting titles in a row since Ty Cobb in 1917, 18, and 19. So anyway, some great names. Lots of 20-game winners, in fact. Real quick, Jim Cott, Wilbur Wood, Louis Tiant, Gaylord Perry, Mike Cuellar, Nolan Ryan, Steve Busby, and Catfish Hunter and Ferguson Jenkins, the last 2, both won 25 games. It is a different game now. Chris Sale has an outside chance. I don't even think he does. He might only has 17.
70, okay.
Right. The article
He
should
probably
now
only
be,
has 2 more starts.
Yeah.
The article now should be, where have all the 20-game winners gone?
Yeah.
Jim Cott, guest on our show.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The men, and the myth. All right, so here we go. This is another one of those articles that was really long. I found it interesting.
I did too.
The men and the myth. It's about bodybuilding. And I can count on one hand the amount of bodybuilders that I know, and I would have some fingers left over. But a couple of them, they're as famous as you get. Certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno, who went on to become the Incredible Hulk. And then
and the neighbor in King of
and
Queens.
Lou Ferrigno was bigger
So
than
himself in the King of Queens. He was great.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of bodybuilders weren't big guys. Arnold was big.
Yeah,
he's about
6'2".
6 feet. I think he's more 6
They said
feet.
6'2" in the thing, but
I know,
you've
but
seen it,
I've
though.
stand
You've stood next to him.
Yeah. Though he'll kick my
Franco
ass for saying that.
Colombo was
He was
5'5".
He looked tiny, but Ferrigno was like 6'4", 6'5". He was a big dude.
Big guy. 2,100 people on hand in L.A. to watch the greatest muscle show ever. Lots of sports shirts. It's a sultry night and hundreds of pantsuits. And apparently, and the article says, apparently a bunch of homosexuals and a scattering of female groupies. So I don't know if they were taking surveys on who the crowd
how would they know?
was,
But, you know.
But that was back in the day.
Go ahead. No, they all worked out at Gold's Gym in Venice, where I worked out for many a decades, not to that same success.
Yeah, by a guy by the name of Joe Gold had a gym in Venice. They worked out there for 8.5 years, what become known as the famous Gold's Gym.
And I would see Schwarzenegger at Gold's Gym. I would say anyone comes in town and says, I want to go see celebrities. I'd say, just come down to the gym with me.
But I like what they said about Arnold Schwarzenegger. They said, one feels that with a single appearance on U.S. television, all channels, he could alter the image of the sport. Mm-hmm. And then he became who he is today. Because at that time, he wasn't doing that.
No.
So to think that he would, to just get himself on TV.
You know, back then he's not a movie star or anything like that.
No.
So he's not making any that kind of money. So what is he lives in a Santa Monica apartment.
Yep.
The gym's in Venice, or he goes there, but you know, he's not this
No.
exorbitant,
But he always had that charisma.
Right.
Yes,
He did.
that smile
He
and the
had
charisma.
that it factor,
factor.
as you would say.
Well, you know, he done that movie Hercules Goes to New York or something, like when he was a bodybuilder in the early 70s, and they dubbed his voice in. You know, it's not his voice.
Oh, okay.
But
They mentioned that the power lifters back then hated bodybuilders.
Yeah,
They did not want to be associated. And this one power lifter said, "What the hell do they do with all those muscles? I'll tell you what they do. They get up on a little velvet platform and pose. That's right, they pose la-di-da." So,
Yeah.
so they didn't really think too much of what these guys were
Because
doing.
weren't power lifters a little bit heavy in the belly?
Yeah.
You know, so it had that
girth.
Yes. But I like the what they said about did you read about why do bodybuilders look in the mirror?
why?
And Arnold talked about that. He said, it's not because we are in love with ourselves, like they say, but to check the symmetry to make sure all the enormous development makes a pleasing whole. You have to have a really good eye to see and the good taste to realize that, okay, your arms are too big for your calves. So really, I always thought they did it to look at themselves, but they were doing it to make sure
Symmetrical.
that their one part of their body isn't bigger than another part or smaller than another part. But did you read about, I know this is Mark's workout. Did you read the weight they lift?
Yeah.
Jeez, 710 pounds in a deadlift, 550 in the squat, and 485 in the bench press. Dang, Mark, how did you do that?
I don't know. That's what you call broken bones. and stuff.
Damn,
I'll
but
tell
you
another
obviously, I
quick.
mean, you have to get to that point. But just to think you go in a gym, and I don't know how many 45s are on those bars. That is.
I used to work out, and what I would do is I would take a lighter weight, which is just 45 pounds on each side, and the bar is 45, so that's 135 pounds. And I do like reps of 50, just like lightweight a lot. I remember one time I go to the bench, and there's a shirt there, and there's no one around. And I'm like going, what the hell? And I wait a few minutes, and no one's coming, and finally I'm ready to move it, and then a guy comes running from across there. Oh, sorry, and he takes it away, and very pleasant, nice guy. And it wasn't until like 5 minutes later I realized, oh, that's Jean-Claude Van Damme.
You really?
Yeah.
Mark, you run into everybody.
I do.
But if you want to have fun at the gym, just put a really light weight on it and then make those noises.
Spot me, spot me.
Spot me, can't get me, buddy.
I messed up my shoulder doing all those reps. My left shoulder now is all messed up from that.
From the 485.
In the new book that would also become a documentary called Pumping Iron,
Yep.
novelist Charles Gaines helped turn the perception of these muscle men with the help of the 27-year-old Schwarzenegger. Of course, bodybuilding is a competitive sport. What is its purpose, said Schwarzenegger? To be the best. What is the purpose of a sprinter whose goal is to do 100 yards and 9 flat? When you win a contest, you get back satisfaction for all the time you put in training. If I become great, it is because of me, not a coach. So they're in the gym 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I mean, they watch what they eat.
Yep.
I mean,
It's a career.
by the ounce. And then I thought this was interesting at the end of the article. Schwarzenegger says that steroids do not build muscle, but may help sustain it while he's stripping down for definition. Actually, he says, I think they are virtually worthless, but everybody uses them before contests, so I do too. So he admitted to using 15 milligrams of Dianabol. And so he was trying to change the way bodybuilding was seen, and he did.
He did, yeah.
But maybe not necessarily in the way he thought he was, because at the time steroids didn't have necessarily the negative.
No one knew about them.
Right.
No one knew what they were
Right.
because it was only for weightlifting.
Right.
Yeah.
I like they went in bars in Germany and they get in fights there.
Yeah.
And he said you just walk in and all of a sudden someone's hitting you and you get in a fight and what you do is whoever hits the floor first, they end up a couple minutes later you get up and shake their hand and they buy you drinks. Arnold said he never had to buy drinks in that bar.
Yeah. The Mr. International is up for grabs. It's won by Lou Ferrigno, like I said, the Incredible
big
Hulk.
man.
According to the article, the worst thing to be for a bodybuilder is smooth. It means your muscles are undefined. Despite Ferrigno being smooth, he won the title, and Arnold said, if I had been a judge, I would have voted for him even though he was not in shape. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think their definition, ironically, of what in shape is a little different.
than us. Yes.
Yeah, I would hate to be in that shape.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Wrap this thing up. For the record, Billy.
Chris Everett, Jimmy Connor, wedding postponed.
What?
There's just too many events going on, and they can't get it together.
Is it still postponed to this day?
I think it is. Well, you know.
Well, you know what happened.
Chris Everett just got done doing the U.S. Open, so you never know. She might have some free time.
Faces in the crowd. Mark, I've heard of this guy.
Yes, Jim Zorn, the quarterback for Cal Poly Pomona. He gained 505 yards in his team's 37-27 win over Southern Utah State. Zorn, the NCAA Division II, he led him in total offense last year. He completed 20 of 33 passes for obviously about 395 yards and then rushed for 110 yards. But Zorn, people will remember, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he was, when they were an expansion team, he was their first quarterback.
Right.
In the late 70s.
And we talked, with J.K. McKay about the Tampa Bay Bucks, who came in the same year with the Seattle Seahawks, and how difficult it was to put a team together back then because there was no free agency.
That's right.
So you basically were only getting the dregs of the other teams. So for Seattle to have, I assume, drafted Zorn.
No. He actually signed a training camp deal, I think, with the Cowboys, and he didn't make the cut because they signed Preston Pearson.
Oh, that's right. I read that. That's right.
So when did Largent come into Seattle? Was he
pretty quickly after that?
Right after
that was their.
Yeah,
okay.
And that was a.
And you know what?
A great quarterback and a Hall of Fame receiver.
Yeah.
To me, the Seahawks will always be those blue uniforms with silver helmets and pants and the green trim that they wore in their first game this year.
Yeah.
That's the Jim Zorn, Steve Largent, Kurt Warner. Those are those
Cortez
Seahawks.
Kennedy.
That's the Seahawks.
I remember they were in the bluish green, but that's when they won Super Bowls.
Yeah,
so
but I don't like
remember
that. They need to go back to that other one.
19th hole. I'm going to start with the Jinx. Right. We love the Sports Illustrated Jinx, and they're talking about Notre Dame losing to Purdue. O.D. Stutman from Chula Vista. I may start my own magazine and put you on the cover.
All right.
He's not too happy. Or another guy goes, wasn't it Sports Illustrated that picked General Custer over Sitting Bull? And finally, it was only fitting Notre Dame, the 1973 national champions and fourth best team in the Midwest, followed another of its old traditions, losing to Purdue. The loss could hardly be construed as unexpected. Purdue coming off a 7-7 tie. So basically, this was not a Notre Dame fan, and he was like saying they got their right comeuppance by getting their butts kicked against Purdue. That still kind of holds true to this day. They're almost always a tad overrated. Go ahead, Mark.
But what's so interesting is Purdue and Notre Dame, when you think of them, you just think of them as Midwest schools, but they're both Indiana schools.
That's right.
And there are a lot of people that have no idea that they know that Notre Dame's in South Bend, but they don't know that's Indiana.
Right.
And they have no idea that Purdue's in West Lafayette, and that's Indiana.
Yep.
There's
a lot of people that don't know that the University of Indiana is in Indiana. Bill, what do you got?
Well, there's a guy, if we remember, I think it was our last issue, that they did an article on all the commissioners.
Yes.
And at the end, they asked what they wore to bed.
Yeah, Frank DeFord.
Yes, Frank DeFord wrote the article. So a gentleman wrote in saying, okay, wait a minute. This is from Bruce Giltman. He said, I would like to ask Frank DeFord a question concerning his bed fashions. Mr. DeFord, do you sleep in the raw? Well, he got an answer. DeFord said, nude in the summer, nightshirt in winter, pajamas on the road.
Nice.
That's I didn't really care.
No. Right?
You know what's so funny?
Mark's naked now, but I mean, that's just his
do people wear pajamas anymore to go to bed? I don't think people wear. That used to be a big thing. It's like a little suit you put on to go to sleep. Right. And I haven't worn pajamas since I was like a little kid.
But you're usually naked, buddy.
So that begs the question about your guys' sleeping habits. So when you guys go to sleep at night, I'm not going there.
I'm afraid to where you were going.
All right. So for Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott, and we are past our bedtime and past our prime.